What's up, everybody, and welcome back to Multiverse Monologues, the podcast show where we like to travel across the multiverses and fandoms that we love to talk about the movies and television shows that accompany those universes. And among those universes this week, we are talking about a TV show. The one in subject is The Mandalorian. It has concluded its 8-episode season 3 run, and we are here to talk about it. We are literally just hours off of seeing this new episode. I know I watched it. I got up at 6, me and Sam, to watch the Mandalorian season finale, and we are here to talk about our thoughts on this very mixed season. I think this is definitely one of the Star Wars pieces of television in recent memory that is just, full of controversy, and we are here to give our thoughts. And I do say we because joining us, as always, on the Mandalorian after show that we've always done, Mr. Ethan Westloff. Ethan, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm happy to be here. We spend far too much time talking about the Marvel multiverse. I'm happy to travel back to Star Wars for the first time in a while. And yeah, we'll talk about the Mixed-Delorian, see how this season played as a whole. I mean, it maybe fell from prestige television to kind of what we grew to love about Rebels and Clone Wars. Some episodes you tune in, fantastic, great watch. And some, yeah, not so much. So I'm excited to talk about this season for sure.
Absolutely. And we kind of have covered a few episodes during this season, but we've kind of been busy, all over the place. But it's nice to be able to sit down and talk about the most recent episode, the finale, and the whole season, as a whole. And to do that, we couldn't just do it, just me and Ethan as ourselves. This is a gargantuan task. This is 8 episodes to talk about. So we have brought on a member of the podcast, who has been on here before. We've had him for Star Wars marathons. We've had him for, other movies in the past. But we have Mr. Parker Duncan here today. Parker, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. It's been a while, and I'm glad to be back on.
And we are glad to have you because, like we said, we've got quite a few episodes to get under our belt. And we're also this week going to be talking about Star Wars Celebration and, all of the news that we were able to unpack over that. We've got the Ahsoka trailer. We've got a Visions trailer. We've got 3 new Star Wars films to talk about, and a bunch of other things. I'm sure we've all, seen a few things and, watched a bunch of interviews. I know Ethan was all over the Andor coverage from Star Wars Celebration, so that's great. And we're going to be talking about that as well. But first and foremost, we're going to be talking to and about The Mandalorian Season 3, Episode 24, The Return specifically, and, Season 3 as a whole. So just to open it up, I'll throw this over to, Ethan first. You're fresh off the episode. Give me your fresh thoughts.
Fresh thoughts is, it did some things I wanted it to do. It definitely had some really, really fun sequences. I was grinning cheek to cheek, some sequences in this episode. But also, I know me and you, Ben, leading up to the release of this particular episode, we thought, what can they do to make really this such a rewarding episode? And obviously I turned it on. 41 minutes. Not what I like to see, especially after the really great 53-minute episode last week. So of course I'm like, all right, how are they going to conclude all these storylines? And they concluded them for sure. But was it too little too late, or was it too much too fast? I think we have a little bit of both of that. So yeah, I think very mixed. I like the season. I think there are great sequences, but not overall. It's lacking a bit. And if I guess so, spoilers for this episode. We're diving into it. If this is the end of Moff Gideon and I guess the true end of the Darksaber, I think they rushed a lot of it. I do, but. Yeah, I'm excited to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, and so I want to, Parker, we haven't really talked to you. I mean, we've talked privately and stuff like that about what you think of the season as a whole, but just to kind of lay it out, you've seen seasons 1 and 2 of The Mandalorian. How does season 3 compare?
So I will say I did really enjoy season 3 as a whole. I have seen the downwards decline. Season 1, amazing. Season 2, a little bit less so. Season 3, a little bit less so than that. Not to say it's not good, just not quite as excellent as season 1 was.
Got it. Yeah.
So you okay, so that's interesting because I think season 2 is actually a step up from season 1. I think both are great. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
Like seasons 1 and 2 are like on the same caliber almost for me. But
Season 1 and 2 are not on trial today. Season 3 is on trial today.
Absolutely,
That's-
you're right. That's
Yeah.
that's interesting that you say that. I'm not going to fault you there though. Season 1 was a very unique piece of television, and I think they opened it up in season 2. But I would agree with you that season 3 is definitely taken it matches the quality of, I feel like, a Book of Boba Fett or a Kenobi. Not to say that those are terrible, and this season isn't either. It's just the mixed storytelling and the all over the place tone. You know, it's just, and especially we live in an era now where Andor exists, where it has really, yes, I'm gonna say it, even though I wasn't
Andor some praise, Matt. Let's
absolutely,
go.
I wasn't the biggest fan overall of Andor, but the way it consistently kept a tone and built the whole season. I know you haven't seen it, Parker, but I'm no spoilers there. But
That's right.
It's absolutely been critical.
You haven't seen Andor yet, Parker?
I have not.
We're stopping this recording right now. Oh my goodness.
We were talking about
Quit
that before.
everything you're doing for the next week. Just binge Andor.
Yeah,
That's it.
I missed out on like the first 2 episodes when it was airing, so I was like, all right, I'll go back when it's all over and just binge through the whole thing, because that's how I usually like watching my TV shows.
Mad respect to you because you've caught up on Bad Batch, but Mandalorian Andor is still sitting there.
I did watch half of episode 1, had to do something, and then just never got back to it.
Okay.
Okay. So yeah.
Well, that's the main problem we'll address. But yeah.
But that's the thing. That whole season of television was so concise, and they told a very great story in the span of the 12 episodes. It's just, you can tell they had a story. I feel like for The Mandalorian season 3, and we're going to talk specifics in episode 24, of course, but for the whole of season 3, it felt like they had one goal, and that was to bring back Mandalore. And Grogu and Din's story kind of took a side step to that. But they still wanted to, have that. So some episodes had Din and Grogu going on little side adventures. The episode with Lizzo and Jack Black was a great example of that. And then they would kind of tie it back into Bo-Katan. She's getting the Darksaber and she's, uniting Mandalore. And it was just kind of all over the place, I felt. And it just makes for a very inconsistent season. I really like what you say about bringing it back to Clone Wars and Rebels. Some episodes are really great. I gave the one with Jack Black and Lizzo a 5. And then the next week comes out, you have the Return to Mandalore. You meet these people on Mandalore, the spies. And then you have Paz's sacrifice at the end. An excellent episode of Star Wars television. And now we're on The Return is what the episode is called. The spies. Who were the spies?
What, last week?
Yeah, who plural, who were the spies? I don't know what they were referring to. That was a huge thing among the whole Star Wars community. There was Rebel Force Radio actually did an Instagram thing where they posted spy or no spy, and it was just a picture of the character. And it was all through their last after show. It was, who are the spies that the title of the episode is referring to? Could it be the Mandalorians they met? Could it be the armor? Could it be the lady on Coruscant who is reporting to Moff Gideon?
We got to call up Favreau and Filoni. I don't have the answer to that.
So
no idea.
Another thing that has fans kind of up in arms is the prelude to this season. The Mandalorian actor who inhabits the suit, so not Pedro Pascal, but the guy who's actually in the suit physically all the time, has teased the season finale of The Mandalorian, it might hurt too much. This was published 5 days ago by CBR.com.
Well, he was definitely right. It hurt for sure.
I don't think not in
the emotional payoff way that I think fans were alluding to.
But that's what he says. He's quoted here. The next episode is going to make you wish you hadn't asked for more. It might just hurt too much. But
I saw this quote all week, and during this episode, I was thinking about it. I'm like, oh no, Bo's gonna die. They're gonna kill Bo here. Oh no, they're not gonna do anything with Grogu. And then
I honestly thought Grogu was gonna die for a little bit there.
yes,
they do stuff with it. And maybe this actor was like, oh yeah, that Paz Vizsla moment, that's in the finale, right? Or maybe he has some really, really deep emotional connection to the Darksaber, which has been this huge relic across Clone Wars, Rebels, and a Mandalorian. So how do we feel about the ending for this Darksaber? It's rushed. It's got to be. What do you think, Ben?
Yeah. This is a huge thing that just happened. Obviously, there's no emotional weight in a weapon, but this is huge, man. The Darksaber is gone. I like what Moff Gideon had to say. It said, Mandalorians are nothing without their trinkets. It's a nice way to bring about how they feel and how they, attribute certain importance to these aspects and weapons. But if that's the way it's gone, like if they don't rebuild that in some way, that's kind of cheap.
It looked
at
like
least
it was just badly damaged. I'm guessing it'll probably be remade.
It's symbolic.
It didn't look like it wasn't like obliterated.
Yeah,
it was crushed a little bit.
Much like the reputation of this show, it's damaged, but it's not obliterated.
You know what?
It could be saved.
Actually, I went on IMDb and I changed my rating for The Mandalorian as a show overall from a 9 out of 10 to an 8 out of 10. Because of this season, you have to take the whole thing into account. And it bumps it down for me. This was prestige, excellent television. But
my question is, so how much does Favreau play into Filoni's greater, we'll talk about his movie later in the podcast, but his greater universe connecting all these different shows, with Ahsoka and what is his Skeleton Crew, The Acolyte, Mandalorian, Book of Boba Fett, all these pouring into one universe. How much did that play into the overall quality of this season? Because I think it's no coincidence that when the only two live action television shows, or the only live action television show that he was working on was The Mandalorian, those 2 seasons were great. But now that he has his hands in all this, is he overworked?
what do you think about that, Parker?
That makes sense for sure. Like, I remember back when season 1 came out of The Mandalorian, I remember watching like I forget what it's called. There was like a little mini series on Disney Plus, like the kind of behind the scenes stuff.
Oh, the making of, yeah.
And I remember listening to Filoni talk about it, and he like was really showing how he just really loved this work, and he was like pouring into it, and like he was going into like what inspired him and how he went back to the inspiration that inspired George Lucas and everything. And in this season, I haven't really seen that same inspiration. Like it doesn't feel quite as inspired as season 1 was. If that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, so we know that he is working on Ahsoka, and I'm assuming that
assuming that's probably taking.
He's not as involved. Yeah. Rick Famuyiwa was actually promoted to executive producer of the show for this season specifically.
He was the one in charge of Book of Boba Fett, right?
No, that was Robert Rodriguez.
That's right. Yeah.
Really, I think, dropped the ball a little bit on that. But Rick Famuyiwa, he did a couple of episodes for seasons 1 and 2 of The Mandalorian. He's been with him this whole process. But Dave Filoni, there's no question about it. He is the apprentice or Padawan, if you will, of George Lucas, who has learned at the feet of the master, who is now in himself, I would say, a master in his own right. They've even gone on record, Kathleen has gone on record saying, we've asked Dave about this stuff. The Dawn of the Jedi movie that was announced, which we will talk about. They ran that by Dave as an idea. What do you think about this? Which is great. That's great to see. He's been promoted. I think he is the most valuable person working in Lucasfilm right now.
Yeah.
But he's been working on Ahsoka, which is coming out in 3 months now that we have 3-4 months. And so, there's got to be that disconnect here. He's done some writing for this season. He has a couple of writing credits, but above that, he's not as involved.
Well, think about it from an investment standpoint. Like, how many years has he poured into the character of Ahsoka versus how many years he's poured into the Mandalorian? So once the opportunity came up for him to do a live action take on Ahsoka, I like, as the creator of that character, he has to be thrilled. So I understand like wanting to pour into that way more than got poured into this, but go ahead.
It seems to me that he's more of a like hands-on kind of person. Like, he wants to be in the making of the show, and at least it seems to me that he doesn't. That's more of his passion more than like the overseeing everything.
Whereas that would be a Jon Favreau type role.
Yeah.
Hey, get this done today.
And that seems to be what Lucasfilm is kind of trying to nudge him into.
Which I think is great. I have a question for you guys. Do you think, in as far as The Mandalorian season 1, do you think this was the plan all along? To take the season and the show to this point where we're at right now? Because at the end of this, the Mandalorian is almost, in a sense, working for the New Republic. Do you think this was the plan from start to finish?
Season 1, I think I liked it the most, mainly because it was its own little self-contained show. It wasn't until season 2 that like the greater Star Wars universe started pouring into it. So I would probably guess that when they were starting to make season 2 was when they made this plan to retake Mandalore.
Okay, so as the show has kind of evolved, so has the plan for where it's going to go.
Yeah.
Do you think Grogu was always in that picture? Or as we now know him as Din Grogu.
Din Grogu, yeah.
Which, how do we feel about that?
Let's move that.
His big thing was adopting Grogu at the end of this, which is a nice little moment, but
all right,
rushed.
I feel like
a little rushed, I think.
I mean, rushed in a way, but like it's kind of always happened,
To me, this finale felt a lot like Daredevil season 3 finale, where Netflix had been canceling all these different shows, and when Daredevil season 3 came out, it was like, all right, the show's better than the rest, but they might cancel this one too, and it turns out they did. So what happened at the end of that show is a lot of these different plot threads, they just felt like, all right, we got to tie all these up real quickly. That's how this felt. It's like, all right, real quickly, let's tie all this up. Let's get him a house. I mean, that was a pretty cool shot of him in his house. Like, I'm like, all right, he's working for the New Republic. We'll see how this goes. But yeah, I think as far as plan goes, Ben, like you asked Parker, the plan for this show, there's no knowing unless we sit down with Favreau and Filoni themselves. But I think literally everyone was surprised with how huge this show got. Like, yeah, we'll do a first season of the show, see how it takes. Disney Plus was new. This concept was new. They had no idea what the success of the show would be, and it blew up. It's the biggest thing. Yeah. So I think everyone was a little thrown off, like, oh, wow, this is huge. This is huge.
Has it worn off at this point, though?
The magic?
I think it was there seasons 1 and 2.
I think what really made season 1 special was it was just Mando and Baby Yoda. Because that's who they were at the time. It was just Mando and Baby Yoda.
Yeah.
They didn't have names until...
The child.
Mando didn't have a name until the finale. Baby Yoda didn't have a name until like halfway through season 2.
Yeah.
There was a mystery there.
Yeah.
In a way.
And so it was just these two characters, for the most part unnamed, going on their own little adventures. And I think that's what I'd like to see in season 4, where Mando's at now.
That's true.
I feel more attached to that pair than I do to like everything else in the show.
Yeah, it felt like the end of this episode, they rushed to, all right, let's get back to basics. Like, let's get back to what made that first season so magical. Just Din Djarin and Grogu doing things. And yeah, I think a lot of the intrigue around Grogu was just the character. Where did he come from? What's his deal? Is he force sensitive? How is he related to Yoda? And throughout the time of this show, we've slowly gotten more and more answers. And I think with a lot of mysteries, as the curtain is pulled back, it is less appealing. It's like, oh, he survived Order 66. That's cool. Jar Jar Binks saved him. That's really cool.
Yeah.
But I think when you reveal things, you lose the magic that it once had.
I don't think there's necessarily a problem with fleshing out and giving answers to that.
No, yeah.
But I think you're right.
Yeah.
You set up.
You have to eventually like learn the mystery.
Right. Of course. But I think in a way Star Wars has always been like on a downward spiral from that, because the mystery that was and encompassed episodes 4 and 5, every new installment shines more light on the Star Wars story and gives more context and, it fleshes that out more. And the mystery of the Force is not as much there. But then Mando comes along in season 1 and you have that back. This character who we've only seen, like 3 of in all of Star Wars, mythology, games, TVs, we have another one now and it's a baby. What's going on here? He uses the Force in the second episode to stop that beast. And then you're like,
And then
whoa.
goes into a coma for like 2 days.
All right. And you're like, what's going on here? And then the Star Wars universe starts to pile in on that. You have Bo-Katan, you have Ahsoka, you have Luke Skywalker, you have Boba Fett. And I think it expertly weaves all of those. And then now you have the story to retake Mandalore. But that story is really only like the last 2 episodes. But think about the rest of the season. The first 2 episodes are Mando's rebaptized, becoming a Mandalorian.
No, I don't think any of us can sit here and look at the story of the season and say, oh, that's a terrible idea. Because it's not. What they do, what they set up is super cool. It's just how they went about approaching it. I think the last 2 episodes could have been the last 4 episodes if they really wanted to do it that way. And we didn't really talk about this. Is Moff Gideon dead? The way the episode plays
Good question.
is he's
I don't
just
think
dead.
so.
I don't think so either, because the rule of television, no on-screen death, character's not dead. So but the way it's played is like, all right, if this was indeed you wanted us to think this was, and either way, Moff Gideon revealed way too late into this season.
Yep.
Just way too late. When was the tease? Which episode did they tease oh, there's Mandalorian armor here?
That was the
6?
episode 20, which would be the 5th episode.
5th episode, okay.
Because then we had 6, which was Lizzo, the bad one, and then we had
That's right,
7,
yeah.
which was last week, and then this week. Yeah, so it's 5, episode 5. But it was just a tease. Oh, he's out there.
Maybe.
Yeah.
I would say the last episode 23, I guess, carried a lot of the weight of the season. It connected a lot of threads. It made me go, okay, that's why you spent time telling that part of the story, and that's why you did this. That's why you did that. It was cool to see all that come together. It just wasn't, the journey there wasn't as rewarding as I think it could have been.
Yeah. There was one thread that did not get wrapped up, and that is the mythosaur.
Right.
Great point.
Other than that last little bit, right at the end, where you go back into the water and you look at the mythosaur, they didn't do anything with it. I was waiting for that all season. I was totally expecting either Bo-Katan or Mando to come out riding the mythosaur with the Darksaber at some point.
And it's weird because now they aren't really setting Mandalore up to be a story anymore. The Mandalorian, Din Djarin, is now working for the New Republic on a case-by-case basis, which I like. I want to say that for the record, I do like that.
Space detective.
Now he's back, and I really do think that could lead to some really cool stuff.
I'm wondering if he'll appear in Ahsoka.
I wouldn't. Well, so here's my, and we're going to talk about that more when we talk about the trailer, because there's a ton going into that, but I don't think so. There is so much in that show, and I'm almost thinking that there's almost too much to even how is 8 episodes going to do everything that it needs to do? But I don't think he's going to be, he may appear in 1 episode, but I don't think, Dave Filoni has gone on record stating that he said, there are shots that I've thought of for 10 years in this story, and now they're done. They're shot, and it's amazing. I can't even believe this is happening. This is a story that he's wanted to tell for a long time, which gives me confidence. This isn't hey, we found a director, Deborah Chow. I want you, us, a corporation. I want you to execute our vision for an Obi-Wan Kenobi series that's been in the works for, 10 years. This is a guy who's had this story planned out for a long time. And there is so much to that show. I don't think he's going to show up there.
Planning this out ever since Rebels ended.
Even before that, dude.
Probably even before. Ever since he figured out how Rebels was going to end.
I am interested to see if Ahsoka's going to make it through it, but we'll talk about that more when the Ahsoka. But to answer your question, no, I don't think he's going to show up there. At least I don't think so. Ethan, Mando,
no, a crossover is fun, but let's tell a story. Let's try not to throw too much into. Like you said, it's already got a ton. It has the weight of bringing back all the Rebels characters. So no, let's leave Din Djarin in this world and get him back to how he is. But let's talk about this season again as a whole, and let's talk about what worked in this season, what we really enjoyed. So I'd say everything with Mandalore, I really liked. I liked the bringing the Mandalorians together. I liked the divide between the two different creeds of Mandalore. I like all that. I think we could have benefited from diving more into that, getting more hokey religious with it. I love that kind of stuff.
Yes.
It's very fun to me. And the Moff Gideon stuff worked super well. The cloning thing felt really thrown in there, especially with Din Djarin blowing them all up at the end.
Which is so weird because the cloning thing has been a part of this season since the beginning. But it did. That's how it felt. It felt, those are Gideon clones? I thought we were doing this. I thought this tied into the sequels with Palpatine.
What it seemed to me is like with the council meeting thing,
which was a great scene.
The 7th episode of the season. It seemed to me that he was maybe supposed to be working on Palpatine's clones, but maybe instead decided to make clones of himself, and as we saw in this episode, wanted to give his clones the Force,
which is a concept that has been explored.
Awesome.
I like that. It was, even though it was thrown in, I like that concept. Many people have tried to do that in the past to make a Force clone. If you've ever heard of the Force Unleashed, that is basically the whole plot of those two games, making a Force clone. So people have tried and failed in the past to do that, and so did Moff Gideon. At least he was very close. I think what we got from that Imperial Council scene is that I believe his name was not Armitage Hux, but his father Brendel Hux. That's who it was. Yeah. In that scene, he was in charge of the cloning process for Palpatine. Even Moff Gideon says, cloning is your expertise. So I think that's what we got from that. He's working on that. Moff Gideon was trying to take power. I think even in that council scene, he even says, Thrawn, where is he? We haven't seen him yet, which is a great little tease for Ahsoka.
I think about this episode or this season really as a whole, it's episode 2, right? When they go to the mines of Mandalore.
Yes.
And not even once in that episode is there a tease or a hint to, Moff Gideon is here building an army. Why is that something they decided? I think if they you take all the good that we like from those first 6, right? Condense it, and then you stretch out the last 4, right? And then you have a 8 episode, or the last 2. So the first 6, condense that into 4. Then the last 2 expand that into 4. Then you got an 8 episode season right there. I think there's a really great story right there. And I don't know why you'd go to the mines of Mandalore and then not reveal, Moff Gideon is here. And he has.
Looking back at it, that does surprise me why they didn't do that. It would have been a very cool tease that would have drawn the whole story together.
Bo-Katan takes down a spider droid thing in the mines of Mandalore. What if it was one of Moff Gideon's troopers that they have to take down, and then you're thinking they leave, and you're thinking, well, what the heck was that guy? What's his deal?
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
then
I
it's
like
more
that.
rewarding later in the season when you see, oh shoot, Moff Gideon's building an army.
Even though episode 7 was great, when they're fighting those stormtroopers on Mandalore, I'm like, oh wow, these guys are coming. There must be like a fleet somewhere. And then they just randomly start running through corridors in an Imperial base. I'm like, whoa, hold on, wait, what? There's a base on Mandalore now? Also a plot hole that I thought of. I was like, the Mandalorians are saying that communications can't be relayed from the fleet to their own comms down on the surface. But we saw Moff Gideon long-term transmitting with all the Imperial Council in his base.
I mean, he might have had something
Probably got a
set up.
super antenna or something. Yeah. If it's his base, you have your Wi-Fi connected.
I guess so. Yeah, that's true. I don't know. It was kind of weird to me. But yeah,
Like he might have made like specialized equipment to specifically to transmit messages.
You can explain it really easily. They just didn't take the time to. What I was really interested in were those 3 Mandalorians they met on the surface.
Right.
Skinny Pete, number 1 from Breaking Bad, and that the main guy was the one of the captains in the Air Force from Top Gun. And I was like, oh my gosh, the one Mandalorian helmet was like a brown guy with like some scars on the side of his helmet. They were super
One
interesting,
was wearing
dude.
a battle droid head as his pauldron.
Yes, those B2
That was
Super
really
Battle
cool.
Droid. I'm like, what? These guys are epic. And they kind of just are
anything.
there
Yeah.
for, and they do that all the time with clone troopers. They have the coolest clone troopers there, and it's like, oh man, I want to know more about that. And they're just there. So I guess it is what it is, but I would love to know, like they could have done that. They could have made this
And how did they not know about Moff Gideon being there?
That's another thing, dude.
Like they knew where the
They're the
forge
spies.
was.
It was them.
Well, I thought that. I even thought, I was like, okay, maybe they're going to betray him, and that never happened. So I'm not sure what the plan was there for the spies even. But I would love to see, I would have loved to see it just be the whole thing focused on the conflict, the Mandalorians uniting together. I would love that. That would have been so interesting to make it like a Game of Thrones, like family level story of all these families. Or in this case, all of these clans coming together.
Clash of Clans.
And literally, you could have called that. You could have had a really interesting season with Din kind of on the outside, of everything, and the armor there and Bo there. That could have been so interesting. But yet we take 40 minutes to fool around with Jack Black and Lizzo. So,
Which that episode, I think, got a ton of hate. I thought it was fun. I
thought it was fun too.
I enjoyed elements of that episode. Now, how it works into the greater story.
It kind of took me out of the story.
Took you out of the story. It did. But overall, it was cool to see Jack Black. I would have liked
Christopher
him.
Lloyd, I really liked seeing.
Yeah, Christopher Lloyd. It was
that was
cool
good.
to see.
I think Star Wars is so outside of everything. Like it's its own thing.
If you ever see like a famous actor,
yes, exactly,
it takes me out of it.
There's even though I grow up with the prequels, so Mace Windu is Mace Windu to me. That's who Samuel L. Jackson is.
Yeah.
But even now, after seeing him in the Marvel movies, when I watch those movies now, I'm like, oh, you know what? Samuel L. Jackson. But Star Wars is like that, They take unknown actors and they become those characters. So whenever you see them, you see the character. And that's something that they do really, really well. And so every time I'm in this universe, I'm like, okay, I'm only here. I'm not thinking about anything else that this actor is in, that this character is in. And they immediately, they absolutely took you out of the episode by putting those two, just global superstars.
Yeah.
That's who they are. Jack Black isn't the greatest actor in the world. And Lizzo is a pop star. There in no way is this come anywhere near, Star Wars to me. And that's what really, it does what so much Star Wars has almost never done. Like, in a way, it's almost a bigger sin to do this than something like The Rise of Skywalker. Because at least I'm in that
far.
I mean, yeah, that's a little too much. But at least I'm in that story. At least I'm in the Star Wars galaxy.
Yeah.
In this story, I'm not
It's
in
like
it at all.
when Danny Trejo shows up with
Yes.
the what's the beast?
The Rancor.
Yeah, when he shows up with a Rancor, you're
Yeah.
like, that's Danny Trejo. Okay.
Oh,
So we've been hating a lot on this season, but
Yeah.
I want to talk about a sequence that I thought was awesome in this episode. So we get the redemption arc to our favorite undercover Jedi, R5.
oh, dude.
R5
yes.
gets some praise in this episode, and that what this episode did is even the transitions, the cutting between high intensity to low, calm, still tense scenes, but just less tense. It really was like, I'm like, oh wow, this is Star Wars. A lot of this episode made me feel Star Wars, and I think that's something that we should really give it credit for. But the sequence where Phantom Menace-esque sequence where Din Djarin is going from ray shield to ray shield.
Yeah.
It's like, all right, R5, open the door.
Really
That
good.
was really cool.
So, that was really fun.
Yeah,
I like that a lot.
One of my two favorite, I guess, warrior archetypes in films and stuff is both the armored knight and the Western gunslinger. And Mando embodied both of those.
He's just two of them, right? That is great. I also really like the jetpack sequence. The stormtroopers and the Mandalorians coming together. And Bo-Katan wielding the Darksaber, just cutting up dudes. Really, another really good
the armor,
sequence.
flying through and just slamming people with the hammers.
I
and
like
stuff.
how she never uses anything else other than her smithing hammer.
In the concept art during the credits and stuff, one of the pictures did show her with a gun, kind of like Paz Vizsla's.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Which I want to highlight. One of the coolest last stands ever in the last week's episode. Paz Vizsla's end is one of the coolest sequences in the whole show.
Yeah.
Him taking on 30 stormtroopers and winning. And you're like, oh my
Best of our
gosh.
armored stormtroopers.
Right. Is he going to survive this? And out of nowhere, you get the Praetorian guards from Last freaking Jedi coming in. They're a little bit different, but I mean, they are the same thing pretty much. They
They're
come
trying
in.
so hard to redeem the sequels.
But in a way, we were even talking about
Yeah,
that,
I was sitting
dude.
there with you. I'm like, man, what? I actually texted you a few weeks ago. I'm
Yeah.
like, can we do a sequel rewatch? But we only look at the good. We try our best to praise these movies because that's what I want. We love Star Wars, and that's why the sequels fell flat in a lot of areas. But there's some good in those movies too that I think they're trying to tap into with this universe.
Dave Filoni really said, and Jon Favreau in a way, he's like, all right, redeem the prequels completely with Clone Wars. And now it's time to go to the sequel trilogy.
That's what Kathleen Kennedy's doing there. She's sitting there like, all right, we saw Filoni redeem what Lucas did, but now let's really give him a challenge. See if he can redeem this sequel trilogy that we're gonna bomb on purpose. But Filoni, we want to give you a challenge. Go ahead.
I will say this: if they can nail this new Jedi Order movie and really bring together that sequel nostalgia, because I mean, dude, we all saw those movies in theaters. It was the first Star Wars movies that we saw.
I skipped school to watch that opening day.
Yeah,
So
it's huge.
even though they weren't the greatest movies, and I will say even to this day that Force Awakens, that I will say I have a lot of love for that movie.
Do we want to roll into
Star Wars Celebration
news, let's wrap up Mando.
Good idea.
So what other closing thoughts do we have on this season of Mando?
I really liked that whole sequence, after they had taken Mandalore and they're in the baptism waters in the mines, and the armor is rebaptizing all of them in the living waters, and Mando formally adopts Grogu. I really like that.
He did that, and I'm sitting there like, bro, you adopted him seasons ago.
In the first season, it's just official now.
Yeah.
He was just fostering Grogu.
It was fostering.
Let's do favorite, not a favorite episode, but favorite moment. Across the season. Let's end it on a high note, because focusing on what Star Wars you love is always better than focusing on the Star Wars you hate. It just fosters anger. It fosters your dark side. So yeah, Ethan, do you have a favorite moment in across all 8 episodes of season 3?
All right. I gotta think about this one for
If
a
you
second.
don't, Parker, do you have one?
Yes.
Yeah, let's do
my
Parker.
favorite moment is episode 2 when Mando is baptizing himself. And you see, like in the few minutes like before that, you see like Bo-Katan and Mando kind of like clashing as the born Mandalorian but not walking the way.
Yeah.
Not born Mandalorian but walking the way. And you see the like reverence and respect Mando has for like Mandalore and the Mandalorian walk. And Bo-Katan kind of like, oh, look at this, I gotta give you the whole experience and everything, and there might be a mythosaur here. Ooh.
Yeah.
Kind of brushing it off like, oh yeah, I just kind of did it because I had to.
Yeah. That's I really like that sequence when they're walking through and she's kind of talking about how her father, sacrificed himself and didn't just kind of stops. And he looks at her and you're like, oh, what's he going to say? And he kind of just, like, this is the way. And shows that reverence that you were talking about right there to both sides. And I think Bo sees that and she's like, okay, now in this way we can unite, because even though there's differences, like that's always been our greatest weakness. I like that a lot. That's good stuff.
Yeah,
that is good stuff.
I love all that they set up with the clash of religions, the clash of clans per se. But I really hated the moment where by default Bo-Katan gets baptized and the armor's like, you're Mandalorian, this is the way. I'm like, oh wow, this is really cool. Bo-Katan is totally just changing her way of life. She's buying into this religion. Us three as religious men, we love seeing people converted. It's so cool to see. But then the armor's like, take off your helmet. We got to unite the clans.
That actually might be my least favorite part.
Yeah,
of the season.
I'm like, really? I really loved where you were going with that. But anyway, sorry, we're praising. Yeah. We're trying to give highs of this season. So Ben, go ahead. I'm still thinking.
So I think it's Paz. Paz's sacrifice was the moment that really just got me hyped, because it was a great episode, and then you ended it so nicely on that last stand sequence that it was just, it was great. But I do want to highlight the scene that happens about 20 minutes prior to that, on the scene of that ship. And we were talking about Bo and Din, their relationship, and they're kind of just sitting there as the sun is setting on Mandalore, and she's kind of just talking about how their whole weakness has been their differences and how the history of it's very complicated. And Mando just starts spitting some absolute bars.
I only know of this weapon what you taught me. To be honest, it means nothing to me or my people, nor does station or bloodline. What means more to me is honor and loyalty and character. These are the reasons I serve you, Lady Kryze. Your song is not yet written. I will serve you until it is.
Like that's good stuff, man. I remember getting chills by that Mando speech to Bo-Katan. And I was like, I am so invested in this right now. And the action that happened right after that, like that is Star Wars to me. And coincidentally, it's the only episode in season 3 to have a 9 on IMDb. In the past seasons, there are at least 2 episodes with each 9s. There's 3, actually I think there's 4 in season 2 that have 9s. And this season only has 1. And it's that episode. And it's because of moments like that, the rich storytelling that they just scratched the surface of. So I wanted to highlight that.
Also,
one,
the first season of The Mandalorian without a face reveal from Pedro Pascal himself.
Pedro,
when he's at the height of his popularity, we don't see his face.
We saw enough of him in The Last of Us, I guess. So
last of that. I'm trying to think of what, I don't know if there's anything from this season where I just go, man, I absolutely just ate. I loved that. But the closest it got was probably any sequence of really liked his Dark Knight sequence with his N1 starfighter and I think the pirate.
Yes.
I really liked that. They're like, where'd he go? Where'd he go? Boom. I thought that was super cool and super well shot. But
Yeah.
I'd say probably the just the kind of climax of this episode up until the final fight with Moff Gideon. I thought everything leading up to that was really good, and then kind of got rushed.
Like the final fight?
It just was fast. It happened. It's like this is the big Moff Gideon fight of the season, and it's just now happening. They're just now meeting up, and then it's over. They beat him. So they could have fleshed it out a little more, but I thought it was really cool. But I like the sequence where he's knifing all the like
some
Parker
really
said.
great fight choreography throughout this whole season, honestly.
Especially like after like just 2 days ago, I watched The Dark World with Micah.
Oh boy.
The choreography was pretty bad.
Yes. Yeah, indeed.
Great plug. Dark World podcast coming Monday.
Indeed.
Awesome.
Yeah. But yeah, I agree. I will say before we move on, Moff Gideon's armor, very epic.
Yeah.
I guess the horns mean nothing.
I saw the best theory was, oh man, the armor is Darth Maul. I'm like, what the heck are you saying?
He's using a voice vocabulary we've
Voice
never
modulator
seen her face.
From Scream 3.
Oh boy.
He's changing his voice.
Yeah, so not the greatest season of television, but honestly, where it leaves off for a potentially great season 4. I just wonder where Lucasfilm and Kathleen Kennedy are going to take it in season 4. I hope she has nothing to do with season 4, because I know the viewership of season 3
I
has
wish it had
been
nothing to do with Star Wars.
well, yeah, that would be nice.
Shots
but
fired.
That would be nice, but it is what it is. Hello everyone, it's Ben, and I'm so sorry to interrupt this excellent discussion, but we ended up talking for way longer than we thought, so that's going to be another whole episode talking about the Ahsoka trailer and everything else that happened at Star Wars Celebration, so stay tuned for that. We thank you for sticking around and listening to our discussion on The Mandalorian Season 3. We hope you enjoyed it. But for now, on behalf of the crew at Multiverse Monologues, this is Ben Rayside signing off. I hope that you have an absolutely fantastic day, and may the Force be with you.